of 1963-1964, when I was just 2 years old, my dad lost his eyesight and went blind, totally blind in both his eyes. And it is only by the miracle of SAI that my dad, who is now 94 years old, has both his eyes and he can see absolutely perfect. This was a journey, I think, that pretty much laid the foundation for my parents to actually come into the fold of SAI, for Swami to actually carry us and bring us into this fold of SAI. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Jai Sai Ram. I offer my humble prostrations and salutations at the lotus feet of our Divine Master Bhagwan Shri Sathya Sai Baba. And I thank him for giving me this opportunity to share this experience with all of you. As I was saying, in 1963-1964, my dad lost his eyesight. I was only 2 years old at that time. My brother was 4 years old. And my mum, as you would imagine, was a very young married lady. We lived in the apartheid South Africa in a separate area that was allocated for Indians. As you would all know, that Indians, whites, blacks and mixed race people live separately. Our amenities were separate, from taps in the public area, to toilets, to shops, to parks, to park benches. Everything was labeled. Whites, non-whites. This was normal for us. We didn't see anything different, as we didn't know anything different. Moving along, my mum did not know what to do. She was totally distraught. My grandfather and my mum took my dad to the best of the medical experts in the area that I actually hail from, which is Durban in South Africa, which is on the coast. And they could not find a single physician or specialist or surgeon that would be able to restore my dad's eyesight. The next thing was to kind of maybe take him out of the province that we lived in. And 600 kilometers away from us was a hospital called the St. John's Eye Hospital, which was managed then by the British. And it was said to be one of the finest hospitals in the country. And they treated pretty much everybody. So my granddad, together with my mum, and they took me as I was 2 years old, and they didn't want to leave me with anybody, and my dad, we headed off to Johannesburg, which was 600 kilometers away. Upon arriving in Johannesburg, they admitted my dad into this hospital, and the doctors examined him there, and they said to my granddad and my mum, as well as to my dad, that they will be able to operate on my dad and they will be able to restore at least 4% of his vision. He would lose 96%, but he would have 4%, so he would be partially sighted. I suppose anything was good rather than being blind, and so my granddad and my mum left my dad at the hospital and they made their way back to Durban because they had no place to stay. My dad would have to stay in this hospital for about a month. They would observe him over a period of time, and then they would make a decision as to when the right time was to actually operate on him. When my mum got back to Durban, to our household, my mum decided to embark on a fast of Nirajal. And my mum decided that she would do this as long as it took for them to actually decide upon a date to operate on my dad. My mum was a great devotee of the Mother Divine in the form of Durga. And she prayed ardently that the Mother would restore my dad's sight, and she embarked on this fast. About 20 days into the month, the doctors did some evaluations and they did some tests and stuff like that, and they concluded that that was the best they could do, is restore 4% of my dad's vision. Now, as Swami would have it, it is only he alone that can actually make anything happen. He just has to will it, and so it is. The day before the operation, they took my dad into the room to do the normal tests, check, usual things like blood pressure and the whole lot of other, what can I say, whole other body conditions that they need to actually check in order to see that my dad was fit for the operation. On that morning of the operation, when my dad awoke, he hadn't gone into theater yet, but he got up in the morning, and when he got up, lo and behold, he could see. His vision was restored. He restored 96% of his vision. 4% was lost. Now, if you remember the beginning, Swami, the doctor said they would give him 4 and 96 would be lost. Swami restored 96 and 4% was lost. The doctors could not say how this happened. They were totally baffled. They could not put an explanation down to it. Anyway, my dad was released. He came back home and everything continued as usual. At this point in time, we did not know about Sri Sathya Sai Baba, our dearest Lord Swami. We did not know about him. But my mum, like I said, was a great devotee of the Mother Divine. It would happen that my mum had an encounter and met a gentleman in our area by the name of Mr. Rana. He had just moved out of the area and he was living in another area, and my mum had bumped into him and they were talking about spirituality. And he mentioned Swami, and he mentioned that he had been to Prashanti and he had seen Swami. And he was a devotee of Shirdi. His family was a devotee of Shirdi as well. And when Swami had incarnated, they had also become devotees of Swami and they had visited Swami. Upon one fateful visit, Swami gave him a cup of tea in a container, a silver container about this size, black tea this is. And Swami said to him and instructed him that I want you to take this back to South Africa. And I want you to take this tea when you get to your home and pour it into a silver thari. And every week you should top the tea up because it would evaporate, as you'd understand, as any liquid does. Swami also said to him that by the end of the first week, close to the end, you would find that a roti would form here, a glutinous kind of roti, the size of the thari. You need to continue to top this up with the tea. And at the end of the second week, you need to separate a second roti that would have formed on top of the first. And you need to pass it along to another devotee or somebody else who would like to take this roti and do this exact same worship that you're doing. But there was a proviso attached to it. And the proviso was that at the end of every week, for 9 weeks you had to do this, but at the end of every week, you had to buy milk and you had to get some crushed almonds, mix it into the milk, sweeten it up, and you should distribute it to the poor in the area. Now, you and I know Swami has a very loving way of teaching us how to do Narayan Seva. And this was our first experience of Narayan Seva on that level. And he offered my mum the opportunity to actually do this. So my mum came to my dad and she said, look, I'd like to do this. And my dad said, yes, why not? Absolutely. Both my mum and dad were ardent devotees, like I said, of the Mother Divine. So my mum went to Mr. Rana's house and she collected the roti and she brought it home with my dad and conducted the worship as was actually instructed by Swami. One of the other instructions was that on a Thursday, there should be no meat in the house and we should observe a vegetarian meal. My mum was already a vegetarian, so that wasn't a problem. My dad used to eat meat and we used to eat meat as well. So on a Thursday, we started observing abstinence from meat. Swami also instructed, if we can, we should do 3 bhajans at least at home at our altar. So we started doing bhajans at our altar. The gentleman had also provided us with a photograph of Swami, which my mum had actually got framed, and we placed it at our altar along with all the other photographs of the various deities that we had at the altar. And we continued to worship and did exactly as one was instructed. At the end of every week, my mum found somebody who was willing to take the roti that had formed and instruct them what to do and do the Narayan Seva as we instructed. On the 9th week, we would have to immerse the roti into the sea, and we'd have to try and serve at least a little bit more people, just milk with the almonds crushed and something to sweeten it. And it is in this way that we actually got introduced to our Divine Master, Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. I think from there, everything is pretty much history. My family got more involved in Swami's work and in the organization that was there. My dad and my mum went on to establish the center in our area. About 20 years later, we moved from that area to another area in Isipingo. And it is here in Isipingo, my dad bumped into his old friend, and many of you would remember Dr. Kumi Pillai, who is in the Sathya Sai organization, was once the president of the service wing in the early 2000s, around about, I think, 2014 to 2016. And his dad and my dad were very good friends, and they were from the same area. And they had also become Sai devotees, and they established the Sathya Sai Center. And they established work with regards to Narayan Seva in the local schools, where we would be involved in providing free packed lunches to the children that came from indigent families and could not afford a meal. Now I'm going to fast forward this entire journey to the year 2014. In 2001, I made my journey for the first time in September 29th to the UK. And I'd got a job in Bedford, and I came here to work initially by myself. And after 3 months, I went back home and I brought my wife and my family across. That is my wife and my 3 children. I brought them across the UK. My mum, dad, and the rest of my family remain back in South Africa and still are there at the moment. I settled down in Bedford and continued to work very quickly. With Bhagwan's grace, I managed to establish a good relationship with the work that I've done, got involved in the organization, and worked very hard within the organization. Around about 2014, I was given the opportunity to become the Regional Service Coordinator for Region 3. I worked with Brother Seelan, Sister Seema, and I'm just trying to think of the other names. Sister Mali, Brother Kapil. We all worked together in Region 3, and many of you would remember some of these names. During that time, the organization was in full swing. I had also been asked at that point in time to come and help raise attainment in what was newly established 3 years earlier as the free school system in the UK. And there was a school in Bedford which was the first free school in this country, UK, that was established. And the children were about to write the first set of GCSE exams. So the head teacher there contacted me and he said to me, "I've heard good things about you, and I would like you to come and head up the maths department here." So the first time he offered me the job, I turned it down. The second time he offered me the job, I turned it down. And the third time I accepted, as the offer was too good to turn down. He dangled a carrot in front of me, and me, like a silly rabbit, I went for it. Anyway, I had to do an interview, and I remember saying to him, "I don't have a CV. I haven't applied for a job. I've only applied for one since I came. All other jobs I was called to. I didn't have to apply for a job. People called me by nature of the good work that was being done." I don't want to sound too pompous here, but this is all by Swami's grace that, I managed to get the results and managed to establish a good name. Anyway, I went for the interview. He said, "Come without the CV. We'll interview you anyway." So I went for the interview and I got the job. They had wanted me anyway, so I got the job. What they had done during the interview process, one of the things was that you had to do some data analysis. After doing the data analysis, I came to a conclusion. And in the interview, I said to them, "Yeah, there's no problem. We can raise the attainment for these children. They are in year 11 already. And this, I was going to occupy this post in January of their year 11 exam. So I would have 5 months to turn around and make these results count. But they had massaged the results. They had inflated it slightly so that when I looked at it, it all looked really, really good. Anyway, I took up the job, and when I got to the job and I spoke to the data manager there, he said to me that all the grades had been inflated by probably a point to a point and a half. I thought to myself, oh Bhagwan, what have you got me into? How am I going to actually get this done? All the good work that I've done is now going to go down the drain, and I'm not going to be able to do anything. At this point in time, I was also working full out in the service wing. I don't think there was a single month that we didn't have a function in the year 2014 and 2015. I remember one year we had 13 functions in 2015. So my work was being kind of put to the side in school, and I was, I think, relying on Swami's goodwill to take over. And as you know, Swami says, you do my work, I do your work. At the same time, I had bought a business, and the business was only about 3 years old, and I was neglecting the business as well, lumping most of these responsibilities on my wife and my children, who supported me through this entire process. As would have it, I went into school, I worked extra hard, went in on Saturdays, worked with the children, and I got, my head teacher to work with me, as he was a mathematician as well. And we managed to get the children across the line. And when the results were published at the end in 2015, our school managed to come top of the town. We got the best results in Bedfordshire. And we came in the first 25% of the country in terms of national results in mathematics. And who else but Swami's grace to thank for that? So I was riding a wave. I carried on in the service wing. And the following year, kind of sitting in this nice, good place, working with my department. And we have what is called a manager's meeting for all the heads of departments, deputy heads, and leadership team. And it's run once a week. And they look at data, and they look at various aspects of year 11s where they can see, which year 11s we can get both the maths and both the English for them, so that actually these results count for the children. So we wrote the mock examination as they do in year 11. This was the second year round. And I marked the papers together with my staff. We moderated them, and we thought, it was quite good. The head teacher, being a mathematician, he said he wanted to moderate the papers as well. So he did his own moderation, and he came back and he said to us that the papers haven't been properly marked. Now, I do mark papers externally, and there's always a tolerance of 1 or 2 marks that is given. So, you could mark something and give 1 or 2 marks extra, and I could give 1 or 2 marks less. There's always that tolerance. And in this meeting, he said to the teachers that the data that has been put together by the maths department cannot be trusted because the marking has not been rigorous enough. I felt so small, I didn't know where to go. There's a whole staff of about 40 teachers and other senior managers, and I didn't know where to hide. Anyway, I left it as it was. We continued to work with the children, and we kind of got them through their exams. When the results were published that year in August, I remember we all met, and he had invited the press over to actually come and take a statement and also video him and giving the results. So all our staff were there. And he mentioned all the department's results except the maths. I thought to myself, oh gosh, I'm sure this is not good. That's why he's kind of left it for the end. Now, we had 108 students that year in our cohort in year 11. And when he mentioned the results, we came best in the town, again, a second time around. And what was the cherry on the top? And we came in the top 20% of the country this time. The cherry on the top was that we have to predict grades for children, as all of you know. And it's impossible to literally predict every child's grade and they get the exact grade. It's only a prediction. It's always off. You predict probably about 5 or 10 and you'll get it right, and the balance will be incorrect. Out of the 108 children that we predicted grades, every single child's grade that we predicted got the exact same grade that we predicted. Now, who else can do that besides our Divine Master? Dear devotees, I think all I want to say is that if you put your trust in Swami and you do his work, he is bound to take care of you. And as I was saying, during that time in the organization, we worked extremely hard because there were so many things that was happening. There were calls every single night sometimes to plan for events, to plan for some activity. And Swami has certainly shown us or given us the grace that kind of for the seva that we done. I want to leave you with one thought before I actually close. I've already overrun. I can see it's 20 minutes and 38 seconds. You know, they say there's a difference between grace and blessings. And I've mentioned this on several occasions. This is actually from Swami. You know, Swami's blessings fall equally upon every single one of us. We just have to be receptive to actually receive them. Right? But grace is different. And Swami often gives the analogy of a bank. He says, you put money into the bank. If you put £100, you can only draw £100. You can't draw more than that. So grace is like that. Think of it as your bank balance. How much you put in is at the point how much you can actually get back. Now Swami says this helps in time where Swami sees that his devotees are struggling and he wants to assist them as the Lord. But the bank balance is showing 0. So even though the Lord wants to intervene at times, the bank balance is showing 0. So you need to earn that grace. And Swami often says that the highest form of worship that you can do is seva, selfless seva. Swami has left us with the adage that the hands that serve are holier than the lips that pray. I'll repeat that. The hands that serve are holier than the lips that pray. So I would urge everybody within the organization to get involved in service of any kind. And try and immerse yourself in this, because if you can, you derive the greatest joy. There's one last message I want to leave everybody with. And this is, the service wing is always looking for more volunteers. So here we go, Jayesh Bhai. I'm actually selling the service wing here. And lots of people turn up and they do various bits of seva along the way. And then we don't see them. Please do come and do ask us. We always have work during the functions or outside the functions at your local centers. Get involved in that. You have to live Sai's message. As Swami always says, my message is the way you live your life. So if we want to actually spread Swami's message, we need to live his message. And by doing so, we will be doing the greatest seva of all. Thank you very much for listening. And thank you for being patient, because I've taken 23 minutes and 18 seconds. And I'm sorry if I've waffled along the way. Take care. God bless. Jai Sai Ram.